Good evening. I'd like to call the Building and Lands meeting this evening. I'd like to use the roll call from the previous Finance Committee meeting. Everyone is present and excused our Auditor Kukuka, Treasurer Ramsey. With that, we're looking tonight at agenda item number A1409. This has to do with the keeping of chickens in Amherst. And with that, I'd just like to say, take a deep breath, relax. Those who think that we're going to get through this all tonight, I have a hunch we won't be voting on anything, with the exception of probably recessing and reconvening and continuing this conversation at another committee meeting. The goal here is to educate ourselves. I know I've learned a lot with a lot to learn. In addition to that, I think people should be given the opportunity to plead their case for or against what we're working towards. And with that, I've just found it's good practice sometimes. If I've got something to say, I should write it down first. So I apologize that I'm reading, but I'm gonna do that. And I wanted to welcome once again to the Building and Lands Committee meeting. Several months ago, we placed a 6-month moratorium on the enforcement of Amherst Revised Code 112107. That would give Council the opportunity to review and modify it if we so choose. Just a reminder, 1121.07 defines farming in the city of Amherst. That touches upon the growing of fruit, vegetables, flowers, ornamental grasses, grapes, farming, dairying, and some animals, and it restricts these practices to lots not larger than 5 acres. I'm sorry, have to be larger than 5 acres. Since then, the council, administration, our building department, legal department, police department have looked at this, and I'm comfortable saying the lion's share of the print headlines, the social media references, and the water cool conversations have been about one thing, and that has to do with the chickens. With so much attention either in favor or against chickens, I'd like to invest our time tonight learning more about chickens. We have some invited guests. With that, Mr. Mulcumber, am I saying that correctly? I'd like to have you come up and speak in a bit here. In addition to that, we have some guests from the Firelands, Agriculture, and FFA organizations. And they'll be here to answer our questions, and I hope there's, I just hope we have a lot of questions, honest questions, I might add. For the members of the audience, I'd like to thank you for joining us this evening, regardless of where you stand on the issue. I truly appreciate that you care enough to get involved. And this evening, I'd like to keep it to about an hour, and I apologize if we don't get to your questions. We'll reconvene this committee meeting, and at that time you'll have the opportunity to speak and be heard. One of the goals for this evening and for the balance of this committee, let's not get too redundant. If we touch upon a subject or we make a point, I don't see a need to keep hammering away at it. We're all capable of absorbing and reflecting. So with that in mind, try and keep our comments focused and limited to the one topic, and then we'll move on. Let's see, members of the council and the administration have a copy of an ordinance that would allow and regulate chickens in the city of Amherst. I ask that you please consider this as a starting point, and it is offered to you with the intent of being discussed and amended along with any other changes needed in Amherst Revised Code 112107 and Amherst Revised Codes 50 and 505. With that, I would like to begin, and I'd like to invite Mr. Mulcumber, if you'd like to speak to us, please.
Thank you. My name is John Mulcumber. I live at 524 Cherry Valley Drive. I've been there for a number of years, and I saw the discussions about chickens on the television, so I'm thankful that these meetings are broadcast so we know what's going on. But I do have an opinion about this, and I'm opposed to the ordinance in general, having chickens in the city of Amherst. My thought is that the lots are just too small. My lot is 1,200 square feet, or it's 12,000 square feet. You mentioned in this first ordinance pass, I think you had 13,500 square feet, I believe is what you had. And if you look right up the street in North Woodhill, I mean, those lots are only 7,500 square feet. So I was confused by where you were going with the square footage, whether that limited or allowed more or less chickens. But in general, I think the lots are too small. The lot that I live on certainly is too small. I'm worried about that because I'm worried about odors, okay? I'm worried about noise, and I'm worried about runoff, okay? Where I live on Cherry Valley Drive, it's a sloping plain. So my neighbor to the south, he drains into my yard, and my yard drains to the neighbor to the north. So you had proposed that maybe a range would be within 15 feet of the property line. I'm definitely concerned that there would be water runoff with waste into my yard. And to me, that's totally unacceptable, okay? So, in general, those are my main concerns. But when I looked at this, I pulled out the protective covenants for our development. I don't know how many developments in the city of Amherst have protective covenants, but Cherry Valley Drive is located within North Orchard Hill subdivision. And so I've got some protective covenants here. I don't plan to read all of them, but I did extract a few main points that I'd like to make about this issue. And the first clause talks about the general purpose and conditions of these covenants, why they're in place. And if I could read from it, it says the real property described herein is subject to the covenants, restrictions, and reservations to ensure the best use and the most appropriate development and improvement of each building site. They're there to protect the owners of building sites against such improper use of surrounding building sites, as will depreciate the value of their property, to preserve the natural beauty of said property, to guard against the erection of poorly designed structures, to ensure the highest and best development of said property, to prevent haphazard and inharmonious improvement of building sites, and in general to provide adequately for a high type and quality of improvements of said property, and thereby to enhance the value of investments made by purchasers of those building sites. So that first clause there is really saying we have these restrictions to help maintain people's property values. Okay, it's not necessarily just to restrict our neighbors from doing something we don't want, but it's to try to protect the property values in the neighborhood. And I'm concerned that chicken coops and chicken ranges on a small lot right next to my lot is going to harm my property value. And so that's really my first concern. My second concern is around the nuisance potential. And so if you go to these protective covenants, there's a section 9, and it's entitled nuisances. All right? So if I can say here from that section 9, it says no noxious or offensive activity shall be carried on upon any lot, nor shall anything be done therein which may or may become an annoyance or nuisance to the neighborhood. No poultry, birds, livestock, or animal of any kind other than house pets shall be kept or maintained on any part of the property. Dogs or cats may be kept. Okay, so in our covenants, it specifically denies chickens as poultry. And so if you would approve this ordinance, you would really be approving an activity that is restricted under these covenants, okay? And so I think that's a problem. I would like the council to consider covenants that are in place, that have been approved by the city in the past, that residents have bought these houses, they know of these covenants, they should have been aware of them when they purchased, and they exist. And I get the final point I'd like to make about the covenants. The last section, it talks about a term. So Cherry Valley Drive, I know I've been there 24 years. It was there in the mid-70s, I think. But the term, these covenants shall run with the land and shall be binding upon the owners thereof and all persons claiming under them for a period of 25 years. Okay? After which time, the covenants shall be automatically extended for successive periods of 10 years, unless an instrument signed by a majority of the then owners of the lots has been recorded, agreeing to change or alter these covenants in whole or in part. So the point of this section is that the residents, by a simple majority, can change these covenants, change these restrictions against poultry if they had a simple majority and they filed the paperwork. So with these protective covenants, there is a way to know if the majority wants this. And my concern right now is we have some activists that want these chickens, But I don't know that you have any data that gives you an indication whether it's a majority of the 10,000 residents in the city of Amherst. Because when I poll my family and friends, it's nowhere near a majority favoring this legislation. So those are my main, I guess, objections and my reasons for them. I appreciate people's other opinions. I think this is about a different set of opinions. But I would really like to see the council keep in mind that there are covenants in place. And if a chicken coop goes behind my house, okay, I'll be just left with taking legal action, right? And I don't think that's positive for the city, leaving that to residents to have to protect themselves that way. Thank you.
Did anyone have any quick questions of Mr. Mulcomber? Once again, we're trying to keep this under an hour, so
Yeah.
just
It's
Ventura?
probably more for the law director for the administration. Do we happen to have any data on how many, you referred them to them as covenants, exist in the city of Amherst?
Deed
Or
restrictions.
right,
Deed restrictions.
deed restrictions or neighborhood.
HOAs, you talking about?
Yeah. Do we have any data on how many of those exist? Or,
No, I mean.
or how many of those
the-
would be?
The law department in the city really, it doesn't pertain to the city or the law department. Those are private deed restrictions between neighbors or homeowners associations. Those are privately enforceable restrictions. So the answer is no.
All right. That's all.
Thank you.
Mr. Mulcomber, you said about prohibits poultry, but it allows pets.
Yes.
What about people who have pet chickens? And I'm not an adversary of yours, I'm just asking a question.
No, so, and I'm not an attorney either, but I read this, that no poultry, birds, livestock, or animals of any kind, other than house pets, shall be kept or maintained on any part of the property. So, by the fact that they're other, they're saying that poultry is not a house pet, I believe, but you can leave that to interpretation. Now, I understand that the city doesn't enforce these covenants, right? I mean, that's what you're saying. I understand that you don't enforce them, but the people that live in these developments bought in the city of Amherst, you represent them, okay? And these covenants exist, and I think the council should, where it can, help to make things run more smoothly rather than more difficult. If you pass this ordinance, you will be in direct conflict with this covenant that covers many citizens in the city of Amherst. That's clear.
Okay, thank you. I also want to say thank you so much. This is what, the second time you visited since I've been on council, and I've always been impressed with how organized and concise and
I wrote it down like you did.
thank you very much. With that, I would like to introduce from Firelands, the agricultural and FFA instructor and class members, Mrs. Finnegan, and help me with this one, Ms. Bryant? Bryant? Okay, thank you.
As you said, I didn't prepare anything. I wasn't as prepared as he was. But I'm open to any questions that you guys might have.
Name and address.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Name and address.
Oh, I'm sorry. Shanna Finnegan, 11215 Main Road, Berlin Heights.
Christine Ballant, 9215 Joppa Road, Huron.
I just want to say thank you for joining us, and in advance of you joining us, I've gotten a bunch of emails, phone calls, just questions that have come up. One of the things I want to do is run through the questions that I've gotten either through email or whatever, and then open it up to council, and they could ask any questions. One thing I've learned in the brief time that I had to visit with them last Friday, what I thought I understood, I don't necessarily understand. Not all chickens are the same. And with that, not all farming is the same. There's commercial and there's private, or then in this case, it could be hobbyists. And I'd like to run through this list of questions and just get their, I guess it'd be professional opinion in your case. Thank you. What is the difference between commercial farming and what is now called urban farming?
Oh, well, commercial and urban. Commercial, I guess, is the large scale farming, and there's a huge range of things that covers. But it would be large scale, primarily for profit, and probably not subject to any kind of production here in your city. Really not in our area, there's not a whole lot of large-scale production farming like that. But as far as urban agriculture, and Chrissy actually speaks about urban agriculture at the state level, and I had a student that met with him last Friday too, who's back in college, who talks about urban agriculture. Urban agriculture is kind of a movement that's going on right now. It's always been there, but it's kind of catching some momentum right now. Urban agriculture is the idea of making ourselves a little bit more sustainable for whatever reason. Maybe it's just because you have to worry about pesticides, or perhaps it's because you want to have a little bit of independence, or maybe it's just for hobby. So the idea of urban agriculture is to allow someone on a small lot or in a city to be able to produce something for consumption. So it could be as simple as growing herbs or growing a little flower garden with tomatoes or something in it, or as complicated as adding in some animals, which is, I think why everybody's sitting here tonight. But it's not meant to be complicated, I don't think. I think it's meant to be something that's enjoyable for people, and it's something that gives people some kind of pleasure, for one of those reasons.
Well, with my many speeches that I give, I talk about how as the world keeps growing, and between the years 1800 and 1990, we have gone from one large city of 1 million, which was London, to the top 100 largest cities accommodating for 540 million people. Being able to have urban agriculture in cities will help sustain not only the people, but will help out farmers, because as we continue to grow and take up land, it is hard for not only the farmers, but us to keep ourselves fed and to keep the animals happy. And that's when industrial farming becomes more needed, but there's not enough room. So being able to say that, yes, I have my own tomato plant, and I don't buy tomatoes from the store, does help out, even if you feel as though it might not. Not only are you saving money, but you're also helping out the farmers and the rest of the people around the world.
Thank you. The purposes of chicken on an urban farm, let's say, what is it, urban?
Urban agriculture, urban farming, yeah.
Okay, city farming,
Sure.
whatever you want to call it. What do we need to know about chickens? And my understanding is not all chickens are the same. There's some that are good for meat, there's some that are good for eggs. Not all chickens are created the same. What do we need to know?
We'll make it a brief synopsis here. She's actually the chairperson of the Fall Department for the Junior Fair for Lorraine County, so she can probably get the better answer, but I'll just give you the quick rundown. They're meat birds, and I'm not sure that those are the ones that are in contention here. So there's meat birds. Those are genetically engineered to grow very quickly, usually have about 8-week lifespans. Those are Cornish crosses generally. And I don't think those are the ones that you guys have been talking about, just in a little bit of research that I've done based on what you guys are discussing here in your city. There are the egg layers, and I think that's the ones that are primarily what people are asking for. So there's egg layers. Those are usually standard breed birds.